Welcome to the Emotions of Life channel. Like the video, subscribe and enjoy the story. The night was quieter than usual. The dim streetlights flickered as Officer Miguel slowly drove through the city's empty streets. The clock on the dashboard read 2:47 a.m. Just a few minutes left until the end of his shift. All he wanted was to go home, take a hot shower and rest. That's when he heard it. A faint, almost imperceptible sound mixed with the cold wind blowing through the dark alley to his right. At first, he thought it was a trapped cat. It wouldn't be the first time he'd had to rescue an abandoned animal. But as he got closer, something tightened in his chest. That sound wasn't a meow, it was a cry. Miguel stopped the car and stepped out, his footsteps echoing on the wet asphalt. The cry became clearer, a thin, desperate wail as if pleading for help. As he approached an old dumpster leaning against a graffiti-covered wall, a chill ran down his spine. Something inside him whispered that he was about to find something that would change his life forever. With a heavy sigh, he lifted the rusty lid. The stench of rotting garbage filled his nostrils, but Miguel barely noticed. His eyes fixed on a small, dirty bundle, almost hidden among torn bags and food scraps. The cry was coming from there. His heart pounded. Carefully, he pushed aside the filthy rags, and at that moment, the world around him seemed to stop. It was a baby. A newborn, fragile, with pale, cold skin as if on the verge of collapse. The baby trembled, struggling to fight against the biting cold of the early morning. Miguel felt a lump in his throat. Who could be so cruel as to abandon a child like this? As he tried to warm the baby against his chest, his fingers brushed against something metallic. He looked at the child's tiny wrist and noticed a delicate gold bracelet, dusty and partially covered in grime. Under the faint flashlight beam, Miguel made out a tiny engraving on the inside. It was a name. When he read what was written, his blood ran cold. That name wasn't unfamiliar. On the contrary, it was a name he knew. For a moment, Miguel stood frozen, a wave of memories flooding his mind. An old, forgotten memory began to surface, something connected to his childhood, a past he had tried to bury but was now coming back with full force. With the baby in his arms and his heart pounding in his chest, Miguel knew this wasn't a typical abandonment case. That child had a direct connection to his life, a connection he could never have imagined. And the truth behind that name was about to reveal a secret that would change everything forever. As he sped toward the hospital, Miguel struggled to stay calm, but his mind was in chaos. The baby's weak cries from the passenger seat echoed through the patrol car, each sound pulling him deeper into memories he thought he had forgotten. The name engraved on the bracelet, Sophia, wouldn't leave his mind. It was a common name, but to him it carried a different weight. It was like a distant echo of a time when he didn't understand what abandonment, pain, or loss meant. Miguel always knew he was adopted. His adoptive parents, though loving, never hid the truth. But the memories of his life before the orphanage were vague, like scattered fragments of a nightmare. The only clear image he carried was of a dark-haired woman who used to sing a lullaby while gently caressing his face. And among those hazy memories, one name always surfaced, Sophia. For years he tried to forget. After all, the past didn't matter anymore. Or at least that's what he told himself. But now, with that fragile child by his side, the past seemed determined to find him again. When he arrived at the hospital, Miguel handed the baby over to the doctors, but he couldn't leave the emergency room. He stood still, watching as the medical team worked to stabilize the child. A mix of relief and anguish consumed him. The baby would survive, but the biggest question still lingered. Who was this child? Why did the name on the bracelet seem directly connected to him? Determined to find answers, Miguel used his police access to begin a discreet investigation. First, he checked the missing children records, but there were no reports matching the baby. Then he tried to trace the bracelet. It was a delicate, clearly old piece of jewelry, something that seemed to hold more sentimental than financial value. What unsettled him even more was the fact that the bracelet had an almost imperceptible engraving beyond the name, a partially erased sequence of numbers. Miguel knew those numbers meant something, but he still couldn't decipher what. In the following days, while continuing his usual rounds, he couldn't get the case out of his mind. Each clue led to more questions, and the connection to his own past became harder to ignore. Then, on a quiet night, while reviewing old documents from his adoption, Miguel found something that made his blood run cold. At the bottom of a yellowed envelope was a forgotten medical report, and on it was the same partially engraved number from the bracelet. That baby was not just an ordinary case of abandonment. There was something much deeper at play, and somehow Miguel was at the center of this mystery. The discovery of that number engraved on the bracelet changed everything. Miguel knew that if he wanted answers he would need to go beyond standard procedures. Something inside him, a mix of police intuition and a more personal, deeper feeling, told him that child was directly connected to his past. And he wouldn't rest until he uncovered the truth. With his mind restless, he decided to start with the most obvious lead: the security cameras near the alley where he found the baby. Using his access at the station, he spent hours reviewing footage from the early morning of the abandonment. When he finally found what he was looking for, the air seemed to leave his lungs. At 2:32 a.m., just before Miguel passed through the area, a woman appeared in the corner of the screen. She wore a long coat and a hood that concealed part of her face. Her movements were tense and hurried, as if she were being followed, or fleeing from something. Carefully she approached the dumpster, holding a bundle in her arms. For a few seconds she stood still, glancing around as if hoping someone would stop her. But no one came. Then, with a hesitant gesture, she placed the baby inside the dumpster, gently adjusted the blanket, and vanished into the darkness. Despite the poor video quality, something about the woman's gestures unsettled him. There was something familiar about her. It wasn't just the way she walked or her hesitation in leaving the child. It was as if, on some level, he already knew her. Miguel paused the footage at a crucial moment. A quick reflection revealed part of her face as she turned to leave. He zoomed in as much as possible, trying to capture any detail, and then his heart began to race. On the woman's neck was a thin, almost imperceptible scar, in the exact same spot where he had one. An identical scar to the one he got as a child in an accident before being taken to the orphanage. This can't be a coincidence, he murmured, feeling a chill run down his spine. Questions flooded his mind. Who was that woman? Why did she choose that exact place to abandon the baby? And, above all, why did there seem to be such a strange connection between that child and his own past? Determined to dig deeper, Miguel took the bracelet for forensic analysis. The experts confirmed that the piece was over 20 years old, and the internal engraving of the number corresponded to a hospital record from a specific place, a private hospital that had closed 2 decades earlier. While investigating the history of that hospital, Miguel found something even more disturbing. The facility had been the center of a covered-up illegal adoption scandal. Babies were taken from their mothers without consent and sold to wealthy families who couldn't have children. And that was when he realized the most terrifying possibility of all. Could he himself be one of those stolen children? That abandoned baby might only be the tip of a much darker iceberg. A secret that, if revealed, could destroy everything he thought he knew about his own origins. But Miguel had no idea that by digging deeper, he would awaken ghosts from the past willing to do anything to keep that secret buried. The clues were piling up, but nothing could prepare Miguel for what he was about to discover next. Determined to uncover the truth, he tracked down the few remaining employees who had worked at the hospital involved in the illegal adoption scandal. After several failed attempts, one name caught his attention: Mrs. Lucia, a former nurse known for caring for newborns before the hospital closed. Without wasting any time, Miguel found her in a modest nursing home on the outskirts of the city. When he arrived, he found a frail woman with white hair, but her sharp gaze revealed a mind that was still very lucid. When he mentioned the hospital and the bracelet with the name Sophia, her smile faded. "You found it?" she murmured, her voice trembling as if an old burden had returned to haunt her. "What do you know about this?" "Please, I need answers," Miguel insisted, feeling his heart race. Mrs. Lucia hesitated, but after a long sigh she began to speak. There was a program, a dirty scheme that used the hospital as a front. Vulnerable mothers were deceived, convinced that their babies had died during childbirth. Those children were given to wealthy families in exchange for money. But there was one case that stayed with me. A case I never forgot. She looked at Miguel intently before continuing. It was a young girl named Sophia. She was only 17 when she arrived at the hospital, pregnant and alone. But what no one knew is that she had already had a child before. A boy. They took her baby and put him up for adoption without her knowing. Miguel's world seemed to spin. He could barely breathe. "That boy, is it me?" he asked, his voice breaking. Mrs. Lucia nodded slowly. "I always wondered what happened to you. She never stopped looking for you." But by the time she discovered the truth, it was already too late. Sophia disappeared shortly after giving birth to the second baby. Some say she died. Others, that the truth was too dangerous to reveal. A mix of shock and fury filled Miguel. His biological mother hadn't abandoned him by choice. She had been a victim of a cruel system. But what terrified him most was the fact that if the baby found in the dumpster was Sophia's second child, Someone was still trying to erase the traces of this secret. Why would they abandon that child now? He asked, trying to piece together the puzzle. Mrs. Lucia lowered her eyes. Because someone involved in that scheme wants to make sure nothing resurfaces. And if that child survives, they are living proof of everything they tried to hide. Miguel's blood ran cold. That baby wasn't just his brother. It was the key to exposing a criminal network that had remained hidden for over 20 years. But there was an even more urgent question pounding in his mind. If someone had tried to get rid of the baby, how far would they go to ensure he didn't uncover the truth? Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Since his conversation with Mrs. Lucia, Miguel hadn't been able to sleep peacefully. Each new discovery made the case feel more dangerous and personal. If the baby was his brother, it meant someone was willing to kill to cover up a secret from the past. And if they had tried to get rid of the baby, the next target could be him. The tension only grew when he noticed something strange. He was being followed. At first, he thought it was paranoia. But on 3 different occasions he spotted the same black car parked near his house and the police station. The tinted windows prevented him from seeing the driver. The dark windows prevented him from seeing the driver, but the message was clear. Someone wanted to show they were watching his every move. That night, after leaving the hospital to visit the baby, Miguel decided to test his suspicion. He took a different route home, turning onto narrow streets and alleys that no one would follow by chance. But with every turn, the headlights of that mysterious car stayed behind him, maintaining a calculated distance. His heart raced. He knew he couldn't bring this danger home. So, instead of heading to his apartment, he veered off to an old abandoned warehouse, a place few knew about. He parked silently and turned off the car's lights. He waited in complete silence, his muscles tense, until the headlights of the pursuing car appeared at the alley entrance. For a moment, the vehicle stood still as if the driver was deciding what to do. But then it slowly reversed and disappeared into the darkness. Miguel took a deep breath, but he knew it wasn't over. Someone wanted to intimidate him, or worse, silence him. The next morning, he increased the security at the hospital where the baby was being cared for. He asked his trusted colleague, Detective Camila, to investigate any connections between the closed hospital and powerful figures in the city. What she uncovered left Miguel even more alarmed. "Miguel, this is more serious than we thought," she said in a somber tone. The hospital was linked to an illegal adoption ring that apparently had protection in high political circles. One of the main financiers was Carlos Valenca, the current president of the city council and a man with an impeccable record, at least officially. The name made Miguel's spine chill. Carlos Valenca was known for his influence and power, a man who always emerged unscathed from any accusation. If he was involved, Miguel couldn't trust anyone, not even in the police force. "And there's more," Camila continued hesitantly. "Sofia, she didn't die. At least not officially. There's a discharge record in her name, dated 7 months ago." Miguel's mind raced. If Sofia was alive, then she could be the woman in the video. And if she was running from someone, maybe she was trying to protect that baby, and he needed to find her before it was too late. What he didn't know was that, while he was investigating the past, someone was already one step ahead. In the trunk of the car that had been following him, there was a folder with his name on it and a single order highlighted in red: "Silence him. At all costs." Miguel was beginning to realize that every step he took toward the truth was leading him to a new level of danger. The discovery that Sofia was still alive, and probably involved in something much bigger than he had imagined, heightened the tension. But what disturbed him the most was the fact that he was being hunted by someone powerful, willing to do anything to cover up the secrets of the past. Determined to find Sofia before it was too late, Miguel searched for every possible piece of evidence. He reviewed old files, cross-referenced information, and with Camila's help, found an address that seemed to be linked to the woman, a secluded house in the mountains, a place seemingly forgotten by everyone. But as he approached the address, something made him hesitate. There were no signs of life. The house was abandoned, with the windows covered by heavy curtains and the garden completely neglected. A feeling of unease overtook him, as if something was about to happen. When he entered, his heart pounding, the first thing he noticed was the absolute silence. There was no sound, not even the wind. The house seemed like a time capsule, frozen in the past. However, as he explored, he found something that left him speechless. A photo of a young woman with the same dark, intense eyes as Sofia, but with a sad smile on her face. On the back of the photo, a message was written: "I was never able to protect you, but now maybe you can save me." Miguel felt a growing pressure in his chest. It was a farewell letter, but for whom? And who was trying to protect him or the baby with that enigmatic message? As he searched the house, his phone vibrated. It was a text message with no sender. Just one sentence. If you don't stop now, you'll lose everything. Go to the station. They know you're here. Adrenaline coursed through his veins. Miguel knew he was being watched at all times, and if the message was legitimate, he was in danger. But curiosity, along with the desire to find answers, kept him steady. He couldn't stop now. It was then that he heard the sound of a door closing behind him. He turned quickly, but no one was there. The air felt heavy, as if he was being watched, even in the house's absolute silence. In the next moment, a creak on the wooden floor broke the silence, and with a speed he couldn't follow, a hooded figure appeared before him, blocking the exit. It was a woman. Miguel didn't have time to react. The figure stepped closer and in a low, firm voice said, "I am Sophia. You are closer to the truth than you think, but the secrets you seek will cost more than your life." Shock overtook Miguel, but before he could ask more, the figure vanished into the darkness of the house. The fear of being captured made him run out the front door, but as he reached his car, a shadowy figure emerged from the shadows and grabbed him by the arm. When Miguel turned, the eyes of a man famously known for his low-profile politics were staring at him with a cold smile. "Carlos Valenca. You shouldn't have dug into this past, Miguel. Now you're in." The discovery that Sophia was still alive, and probably involved in something much bigger than he had imagined, heightened the tension. But what disturbed him the most was the fact that he was being hunted by someone powerful, willing to do anything to cover up the secrets of the past. Determined to find Sophia before it was too late, Miguel searched for any possible evidence. He reviewed old files, cross-referenced information, and with Camila's help, discovered an address that seemed to be connected to the woman, an isolated house in the mountains, a place seemingly forgotten by everyone. But as he approached the address, something made him hesitate. There were no signs of life. The house was abandoned, with the windows covered by heavy curtains and the garden completely neglected. A feeling of unease took over him, as if something was about to happen. When he entered, his heart racing, the first thing he noticed was the absolute silence. There was no sound, not even the wind. The house seemed like a time capsule, frozen in the past. However, as he explored, he found something that left him speechless. A photo of a young woman with the same dark, intense eyes as Sophia, but with a sad smile on her face. On the back of the photo, a message was written, "I was never able to protect you, but now maybe you can save me." Miguel felt a growing pressure in his chest. It was a farewell letter, but to whom? And who was trying to protect him or the baby with that cryptic message? As he rummaged through the house, his phone vibrated. It was a text message with no sender. Just one sentence. "If you don't stop now, you'll lose everything. Go to the police station. They know you're here." The adrenaline rushed through his veins. Miguel knew he was being watched at all times, and if the message was legitimate, he was in danger. But curiosity, coupled with the desire to find answers, kept him steady. He couldn't stop now. It was then that he heard the sound of a door closing behind him. He turned quickly, but there was no one there. The air felt heavy, as if he was being watched, even in the absolute silence of the house. The next moment, a creak in the wooden floor broke the silence, and with a speed he couldn't keep up with, a hooded figure appeared before him, blocking the exit. It was a woman. Miguel had no time to react. The figure approached and with a low and firm voice said, "I am Sophia. You are closer to the truth than you think, but the secrets you're looking for will cost you more than your life." Shock overtook Miguel, but before he could ask more, the figure disappeared into the darkness of the house. The fear of being caught made him run to the front door, but as he reached the car, a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness and grabbed his arm. When Miguel turned, the eyes of a man famously known for his low-profile policy met his, with a cold smile. "Carlos Valenca. You shouldn't have dug into this past, Miguel. Now you're in my way and there's no turning back." Miguel knew, with terrifying clarity, that he was at the center of a conspiracy much bigger than he had imagined. The truth about his origin, the baby, and Sophia. Everything was interconnected in a deadly game of power, and he was now marked as a target. Miguel felt a knot in his stomach as Carlos Valenca grabbed his arm. The man before him was powerful, unbeatable in the political world, and with a past that no one dared question. The coldness in Valenca's eyes indicated that he would not hesitate to destroy Miguel to protect his secrets. But Miguel was no longer afraid. The truth had consumed him completely. "You have no idea what you're starting, Miguel," Valenca said with a threatening smile. "If you think you can come to me and reveal what's going on, you're very mistaken. I won't let a simple police investigation destroy what I've built. Miguel didn't back down. He knew he had little time, and all he wanted now was to understand what was happening. Why the baby? What do you have to do with this? He asked, his voice tense with frustration. Valenka looked around, checking if they were being watched before finally getting closer and lowering his voice. The baby? He began with an almost amused tone. The baby is the key to a secret that could destroy everything you think you know about your life. And about your origin. Miguel frowned. The key to a secret? Valenka's words didn't make sense. He was close to the truth, but something still didn't fit. Then, before he could say more, Valenka looked at him with a smile that now seemed almost sad. Do you really think that baby is your brother? He asked, challenging Miguel to understand what he had just said. Miguel froze. What? What are you talking about? Miguel replied, unable to believe what he was hearing. Valenka got even closer and, with a look of disdain, revealed the truth that Miguel had never imagined. Sofia isn't your mother, Miguel. You were switched at birth. The baby you found in the trash, it's not what you think. He's your son. The truth hit Miguel like a cruel blow. The baby he had saved, the abandoned, fragile and vulnerable child, was his son. Miguel's son. Valenka's words kept echoing in his mind. He tried to understand what had just been revealed, but everything seemed to be spinning around him. Sofia, the woman he believed to be his biological mother, wasn't his mother. She had been forced to be part of this illegal adoption scheme, and in the process, babies were switched to cover up a darker mistake. But, how is this possible? Miguel murmured, his body tense, feeling a wave of anger and confusion. Valenka smiled subtly as if he had finally placed the last piece of the puzzle. You don't understand, Miguel. The mistake was yours. You're not just Sofia's son, you're the central piece of something much bigger. Your real mother was a woman from a powerful family who wanted to keep control of the inheritance you represented. But she couldn't get involved, so you were taken from her. And that baby? The baby you found? He's the legacy of a dynasty that, for years, we've been able to keep hidden. The swap was to ensure you would never know the truth. Miguel felt his legs weaken under the weight of the revelation. He wasn't just a victim of this corrupt system, he was at the center of it all. He had been chosen not only as an adoption experiment, but as part of a power play, wealth and family manipulation. But before he could process the magnitude of the situation, Valenka finished with a low laugh. You now have a choice, Miguel. You can continue this crazy search for answers, or you can do what I always knew you would. Become part of my empire. Miguel could hardly process Valenka's words. His world was turning upside down, and every new revelation seemed to complicate the story even more. The baby wasn't his brother, but his son. How was that possible? He felt as if he had been pushed into a nightmare where nothing made sense. Valenka, noticing Miguel's confusion, continued to explain with a tone that mixed amusement and coldness. You, Miguel, weren't just a victim of an adoption error. What no one knows, and what Sofia couldn't reveal, is that you were the child of a forbidden love, Valenka said, with a look that suggested he had already anticipated Miguel's surprise. Your real mother, the woman you never knew, was Isabel Valenka, my sister. Miguel stared at him, completely stunned. Isabel Valenka was a woman he knew only by name, a prominent figure in society, but he never imagined she could be his mother. Valenka continued, his tone darkening. Isabel was pregnant with you when she realized she couldn't keep the baby. The pressure from our family, from society, from everything we represented, was overwhelming. So she decided to hide her pregnancy. When you were born, the truth was erased and your name was never registered. The plan was simple. Your birth would be covered up and you would be adopted by another family without anyone knowing your true origin. But Sofia, she made a mistake and the baby you found in the trash was hers, your daughter who, by accident, was given to another mother. A twist of fate. Miguel felt his throat tighten. He couldn't believe it. His baby was his daughter. The girl he had been trying to save from a cruel fate was, in reality, the reason for his own existence being in danger. She was the true heir to an empire of secrets and lies, and now Miguel was caught between two worlds, the life he knew and a dark truth that could destroy everything. Valenka stepped back, satisfied with the impact of his words. You were the means to an end, Miguel. You thought you were uncovering the truth about Sofia, but what you were really after was the secret your daughter represents. She is the key to what our family lost and to what many are willing to do to keep control. Isabel's blood runs through her veins. And your connection with her, it's not a coincidence. You were chosen for the task of protecting or destroying the legacy of our family. That's the truth. Miguel, though shaken, now understood the reason for the danger surrounding him. The baby in the trash was more than just a victim. She was the heir to an empire that Valenka and his allies wanted to control at all costs. The baby swap was just the beginning of a larger plan, one that involved Isabel, Miguel's true mother, and the manipulation of destinies for the sake of power. Miguel looked at the baby, now even more vulnerable than before. He knew what he had to do. The only choice he had was to protect his daughter, reveal the truth, and destroy the empire of lies and manipulation surrounding him. He would no longer be a pawn in this power game. He had learned the hard way that no matter how dark the past was, the future was in his hands. Miguel left the house with the baby in his arms, determined to expose the web of corruption and ensure she had a chance to live away from the shadows that had surrounded her life. He knew the road would be dangerous and filled with powerful adversaries, but he was ready to face anything. The truth was finally in sight, and with it, his daughter's fate would be rewritten. Miguel felt that he had finally reached the end of the long journey that had led him to this point. He didn't know exactly what to expect when he found Maria, the woman who, by chance, was his daughter's biological mother. Up until that moment he believed the child was a lost angel, but now he knew the truth. She had a real mother and he needed to do what was right. After tracking clues and making discreet inquiries, Miguel managed to find out where Maria lived, in a simple apartment in the city's suburbs. The woman with whom he had shared a brief moment of their lives, not knowing she was carrying his child, was now about to reunite with her lost daughter. When he reached the apartment door, Miguel felt the weight of the situation. He knew that handing the baby over to Maria would change many things for everyone. This moment wouldn't just be one of revelation but of redemption for everyone involved. Miguel rang the doorbell and waited. The door slowly opened to reveal a young woman, her face showing surprise and apprehension. Maria looked like an ordinary woman, but her gaze held deep sadness, as if she carried a heavy burden. When her eyes met Miguel's, a shock ran through her body. The maternal instinct made her look at his arms, where the baby lay quietly, and her expression changed instantly. It was as if she knew what was about to happen but couldn't believe it. "You?" Maria began, her voice trembling. Who are you? What's happening? Why are you with my daughter?" Miguel, holding the baby in his arms, took a step forward. The moment had come. Speechless, he extended the child to Maria, his eyes welling up. Maria looked at her daughter and then at Miguel, as if trying to understand the reality of the situation. "I know who you are, Maria," Miguel said, his throat tight. "I found out everything. She's your daughter. The child was stolen from you and I found her. I didn't know anything until now." Maria, her eyes wide, held the baby in her arms. The feeling of having her daughter back was indescribable. She looked at Miguel, her eyes full of unanswered questions. "But, how did this happen? How did she end up with you?" Maria asked, her voice shaky. Miguel swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the truth that was finally being revealed. "The exchange was part of a plan. Something no one ever wanted you to know. I didn't know anything, but after a lot of investigation I found out that your daughter was stolen right after birth, and everything was covered up. I found her, and ever since, the only thing I knew was that she needed to be with you." Maria, holding her daughter in her arms, looked at Miguel, finally believing his words. The maternal bond was stronger than any doubt. "I can't believe my daughter?" Maria murmured, touching the baby's forehead with a tenderness only a mother could have. "I thought I had lost her forever." Miguel watched the scene, feeling that, despite all the chaos around, he had finally done the right thing. He had returned Maria's daughter to her true mother. Now, it was up to Maria and the child to rebuild their lives, away from secrets and lies. "She's with you now, Maria? And I'll do whatever it takes to make sure nothing ever separates her from you." Maria looked at Miguel, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you for giving me back my daughter. I don't know what I would have done without you." Miguel then took a step back, aware that his mission was complete. He had uncovered the truth, faced the past, and finally now his family was safe. Thank you for watching. If you liked it, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for more emotional stories. See you next time.